Did you know that during the time of Christ, there were already many grand structures built? And in fact, that's what experts have long debated, whether these were really built or not. But based on many studies, these are said to have really existed, and there were even artifacts found. And in fact, according to the Bible, there were some structures built in the past that were not just ordinary structures, but also contained spiritual mysteries and messages that are no longer found in history. And each one of them comes with its own mystery, lesson, and truths that are rarely discussed. In this video, join me as we discover the most amazing constructions in the Bible and also find out the secrets behind how they were made. And for your information, the last topic might change everything you thought you knew about faith and history. But before we start, don't forget to like this video. It means a lot to us content creators. Thank you so much, and now let's get started. The Ark of Noah. Can you imagine building a massive ship without modern equipment, without cranes, without electricity, and your only resources are wood, sweat, and faith? That's exactly what Noah did. And even after thousands of years have passed, he remains one of the clearest, strongest examples of unwavering faith. According to the Bible, during a time of extreme wickedness in the world, God chose Noah for a mission that seemed impossible for a human to accomplish: to build a giant vessel that would serve as a refuge for his family and for every kind of animal in the world from the coming great flood. Imagine the scene: a man in the middle of dry land, busy cutting wood and building rooms inside a massive structure. While the sun beats down on him, his neighbors laugh at him, call him crazy, and doubt what he's doing. But every day he kept working because he knew that God had entrusted him with the salvation of all living creatures. The size of his ark was almost as big as a modern cargo ship. It was 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. It was made of gopher wood and coated with pitch inside and out, so that water couldn't get in. Now think about it. How did Noah manage to do all of that without any machinery or technology? How did he manage to bring thousands of animals into the ark and take care of them? And most of all, did the great flood mentioned in the Bible really happen? Many scientists and historians have examined this. According to studies, there is evidence of widespread flooding in the Mesopotamian region thousands of years ago. Various civilizations, from the Sumerians to the Babylonians, have records of a flood that destroyed the entire land. And notably, almost all of their stories are similar. But what's even more surprising is that there are alleged discoveries by expeditions on Mount Ararat in Turkey. In 1959, a Turkish pilot saw a strange shape on the side of the mountain. It looked like the remains of a ship buried in the ground. Since then, missions from different places have followed to find out if this is really Noah's Ark. Some claimed they saw pieces of wood that seemed to have turned to stone over time. Others said they were able to record land measurements that matched the dimensions of the ark according to the Bible. But until now, there is still no final evidence. So the question remains, are those remains really part of Noah's Ark, or are they just a natural formation of the mountain? While science continues to search, but faith never doubts. For those who believe, it's enough to know that if God said it, then it surely happened. The walls of Jericho. Imagine standing in front of a city surrounded by massive walls, thick, strong, and designed so that no enemy could ever get through. A fortress built as a defense against any danger from the outside. Now, try to imagine the impossible. These walls did not fall because of weapons or explosions or war machines. They fell because of something more mysterious, the sound of trumpets and shouts of faith. This is the story of Jericho, one of the oldest cities in human history, and witness to one of the most mysterious events in the Bible. An event that, until now, still cannot be fully explained by science and history. But the question is, did this really happen? And if yes, What is science's explanation for the sudden collapse of the walls of Jericho? According to the Bible, Jericho is a strong city surrounded by walls that were extremely high and sturdy. That's why it was impossible for any army to enter. For the Israelites who struggled in the desert for 40 years, conquering Jericho seemed like an impossible battle. But God had a plan that was contrary to all known strategies of war. The command to the Israelites was to march around the city once each day for 6 days. No weapons, no attack, no noise, just silence, like waiting for a signal you can't see. On the 7th day, they were ordered to march around the city 7 times. While the trumpets sounded in the air, all the people would shout together. And at that very moment, the walls collapsed. Not because of machinery, not because of an earthquake, but because of something that cannot be explained by man. Now think about it. Is that possible? How could it happen that just by marching and the sound of a trumpet, such strong walls would suddenly collapse? Because of this, many archaeologists began investigating Jericho in the 20th century. And that's where even more astonishing discoveries began. In the 1950s, a British archaeologist named Kathleen Kenyon conducted a thorough excavation at the site. She made an astonishing discovery. Remains of a small settlement, massive walls, and they seemed to have collapsed suddenly. But what was even more surprising, according to the evidence, the walls collapsed from the inside out, something that is almost impossible to happen in ordinary wars. Usually when a city is attacked, the walls are brought down from the outside in. In Jericho, however, the destruction appeared to begin from within. And this matches the story in the Bible, that the walls were not destroyed by man, but by the power of God. But there were also some who tried to explain it in a natural way. According to some researchers, it is possible that a strong earthquake caused the collapse. It's true. Jericho is built on top of a geological fault line, so it's normal for tremors to occur in the area. At first glance, the idea seems to make sense, but there's a big question. How did Joshua and the others know about it? How did the Israelites know the exact time of the tremor? And why did it coincide with the very moment the trumpet sounded and everyone shouted together? If an earthquake was really the cause, such exact timing would be impossible. That's why many believe that this was not just a natural event, but a miracle that proves the power of God. Until now, Jericho remains a mystery, a city that was once surrounded by faith and was destroyed not by man, but by a sound from heaven. The Temple of Solomon. Imagine a building so magnificent that every wall is covered in pure gold, sparkling in the sunlight like light from heaven. A place considered the holiest of all, built to be the very dwelling place of God's presence. This is Solomon's temple, the masterpiece of Israel's sacred architecture. A construction shrouded in mystery, honor, and power. But how was such an amazing structure built? What does archaeology say about its existence? And above all, what is the true spiritual significance of this temple? The story begins with King David, the great leader of Israel, who had a strong desire to build a temple for God. But it was not destined for him, but for his son and heir. Solomon was the king considered the wisest in history. The chosen location was not a mere accident. It was on Mount Moriah, a sacred place where hundreds of years before that, Abraham almost offered his son Isaac. A place marked by heavenly miracles and events that cannot be explained by man. The construction of the temple was not just an engineering task. It was a massive project where every detail had a sacred purpose. The stones used were carved and prepared far from the actual construction site according to God's command. So there was no sound of hammer or chisel heard while the temple was being built. Now think about it. How did they move and set up those huge blocks of stone without any noise and without any machinery? It's a mystery that still can't be fully explained to this day. They also used the cedars of Lebanon, one of the most sacred and most prestigious types of wood during that time. Its fragrance spread throughout the area, and it was not only used for its beauty, but also as a symbol of greatness and connection to God. Here's the most amazing detail. The entire temple interior was covered in pure gold. The walls shimmered like rays of heaven. Every corner had carved cherubim, palm trees, and flowers, creating a view that seemed out of this world. At the innermost part of the temple was the most sacred area, the Holy of Holies. There lay the Ark of the Covenant, the most renowned sacred object in history, symbolizing the very presence of God among His people. After 7 years of careful work, the temple was completed, and on the day of its dedication, an unexpected miracle occurred. Solomon gathered all of Israel for a grand ceremony. In front of the altar, he prayed earnestly, asking God to accept this temple as his dwelling place here on earth. And suddenly, a heavenly cloud descended and filled the entire temple, a presence that everyone could almost feel, so holy, so radiant, and indescribable. After that, fire came down from heaven and consumed the offerings on the altar. All the people fell to their knees in fear and awe because they knew that God was truly there, alive, real, and powerful. But the story didn't end there. Solomon's temple remained covered. For many centuries, its mysteries, its secrets, its destruction, and the legends surrounding it have continued to resurface in our history up to this day. The Tower of Babel. Imagine a world where all people speak only one language. No barriers, no boundaries. Every nation understands each other, united and with a single purpose: to build a tower that reaches up to the heavens. But instead of drawing closer to God, this ambition became the reason for His anger. And that was where an event began that changed the course of humanity forever. The confusion of language and understanding among people, according to the Bible. After the great flood, Noah's descendants began to multiply and spread throughout the world. For a time they remained united. They spoke one language. They had one plan. So nothing seemed impossible for them until they decided to settle in the plain of Shinar, which is now known as part of ancient Mesopotamia. But they didn't just live there. They wanted to leave a mark in history. Using bricks hardened by fire and bitumen as adhesive, they began to build a massive tower, a symbol of pride and self-confidence, a project that would prove they didn't need God. They said, let's make a name for ourselves and build a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we won't be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Genesis 11, verse 4. As the tower rose higher, their pride grew even stronger. And that's where God intervened. He saw what people were doing and decided to confuse their language. Suddenly, they could no longer understand each other. Imagine the chaos. A worker asking for bricks but being given water instead. The supervisor trying to give orders, but no one understands what he's saying anymore. The once orderly and organized construction suddenly turned into chaos. In just a short time, what was once a single project of unity became a symbol of humanity's division. And because there was no more communication, they left the tower and spread out to different parts of the world, which became the root of the emergence of the various nations and cultures that we have today. But the question is, did this really happen? According to some scholars, the Tower of Babel may have been based on a real building. The ancient ziggurats, or pyramid-shaped temples, common in Mesopotamia. One of the most famous of these is the Tabernacle, a massive temple in ancient Babylon built in honor of Marduk, the city's god. The name Tabernacle means the house that connects heaven and earth. It's notably similar to the purpose of the Tower of Babel mentioned in the Bible. Over the centuries, it was destroyed and rebuilt several times until it was eventually abandoned and ruined, which is why it remains a mystery. Is this really the original tower mentioned in the scriptures? There is no definite answer, but the lesson of this story is clear. The Tower of Babel is more than a story about language being destroyed. It's a warning against human pride. How far can ambition and power take us? And when does it become dangerous for humans to try to match God? Because sometimes, in the midst of our desire to reach the heavens, we forget that our abilities as humans still have limits. The Second Temple of Jerusalem. Imagine living in a time of great suffering and exile. Your people were taken from their own land, brought to a foreign place, and the holiest temple, the center of your faith, was reduced to ashes and ruins. For many, this could have been the end of their connection to God, but not for the Jews. After a long captivity in Babylon, they returned to their land carrying a new dream to rebuild the temple and revive their faith. The Second Temple of Jerusalem was not just a building, it was a symbol of rebirth, hope, and the identity of an entire nation. But how was it built? What made it magnificent? And most of all, why was it destroyed again in an unforgettable tragedy? After 70 years in exile, the Persian king Cyrus the Great allowed the Jews to return to their land. Not only that, he also ordered the temple to be rebuilt and even helped fund the project. But when they arrived, they faced a bitter reality. The new temple was not as grand as Solomon's. It was smaller, simpler, and the Ark of the Covenant was gone. The walls that once shimmered with pure gold were also gone. The elders who had seen the original temple of Solomon wept. In their eyes, the new building seemed like only a shadow of its former glory. But there was a message brought by the prophet Haggai. The glory of this latter house shall be greater than the former. Haggai 2 verse 9. How is that possible? How can the simpler temple be greater than the first? After a few centuries, Herod the Great arrived, an ambitious king who was obsessed with grand projects. He decided to expand and beautify the Second Temple. The once simple building became one of the most magnificent structures of the ancient world. He doubled the size of the courtyard, built massive pillars, wide walkways, and surrounded it with walls covered in gold and white marble. Under the Jerusalem sun, it sparkled like light from heaven. The result? A view that no one who saw it could ever forget. The temple became the heart of Jewish faith, where thousands of people gathered to pray, offer sacrifices, and seek the presence of God. And this is also where Jesus taught. Here he drove out the merchants and delivered a shocking prophecy. Not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. Matthew 24 verse 2. And that prophecy did come true. In 70 AD, the Roman Empire attacked Jerusalem in response to the first Jewish revolt. After several months of fighting, the Romans burned the temple. According to records, the gold melted in the heat of the fire and dripped between the stones. So the soldiers broke it apart to get the remaining gold. After all, only ruins remained. Only one part of the structure remained standing. The Western Wall, the only remnant of the former greatness of the Temple of Solomon and Herod. But it is also a reminder of pain and loss. But the story does not end there. The temple was once the dwelling place of God's presence, the place where offerings were made and forgiveness was sought. But when Jesus came, he brought a revolutionary message. He said, "Destroy this temple and I'll raise it again in 3 days." John 2:19. He wasn't talking about the building, but about himself. From then on, the true temple, the temple of God, was not made of stone, but was in the heart of every person who receives him. The Tabernacle of Moses. Before Solomon's magnificent temple was built, there was already a holy dwelling place that was set up in the middle of the desert. A temple made of cloth and wood, not of marble or gold. But here is where God's presence first dwelled among his people. This is the Tabernacle of Moses, the first mobile sanctuary in the history of Israel. The tabernacle is not just a tent. It was built according to God's very instructions to Moses. While the Israelites were traveling out of Egypt toward the promised land, every measurement, every material, every design all have deep spiritual meaning. Imagine, in the middle of the vast desert, a large tent filled with golden furnishings. an altar for offerings, the light of the golden lampstand, and at the innermost part, the Ark of the Covenant, the container holding God's commandments. According to the Bible, its design was given directly by God to Moses on Mount Sinai. The Israelites, even though they were tired from traveling, contributed everything they could. Gold, silver, bronze, fabric, wood. All contributions were voluntary, given by those willing to serve. When it is set up in the middle of the camp, the tabernacle serves as the center of the people of Israel. This is where they offer their sacrifices. This is where they ask for forgiveness. And this is where the amazing presence of God is seen. A cloud by day and a fire by night positioned above it. The design of the tabernacle has three parts: the outer court, where the offerings are made; the holy place, where the altar of incense and the golden lampstand are located; and the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant rests. Only Moses or the high priest could enter, but more than just a physical structure, the tabernacle is a symbol of God's meeting with his people. It serves as a reminder that even though they were in the desert, God never left his presence. Every time they left a place, they carefully dismantled each part, placed them on carts, and carried them to the next camp. A mobile sanctuary, a sign of journeying with God. Although it was later replaced by permanent temples, Moses' tabernacle remained the model for worship and holiness for future generations. It is a reminder that we don't need grand buildings to feel the presence of God, because wherever there is faith in his presence, that is the true holy place. The Ark of the Covenant. Of all the sacred things mentioned in the Bible, nothing is more meaningful and mysterious than the Ark of the Covenant. A golden vessel said to contain the very presence of God. According to the Bible, God commanded Moses to have the ark made while the tabernacle was being built. It was made of acacia wood, coated with pure gold inside and out, and had two cherubim on top facing each other, with their wings appearing to cover the throne. But its contents are what truly matter. Inside were the tablets of the Ten Commandments, the manna sent by God from heaven, and Aaron's staff that once blossomed as a sign of his authority. These things are reminders of God's covenant with his people, proof of his faithfulness and presence among Israel. When the priests carry it, the ark is always covered with a veil, and no one is allowed to touch it except those who are ordained. Anyone who approaches or touches it without permission is immediately punished by death. This is how sacred this object is. In every battle of Israel, the ark is the center of their strength and confidence. It is carried by the priests at the front of the army as a symbol of God's presence fighting for them. When they crossed the Jordan River, the water stopped flowing and the path dried up while the priests stood. They carried the ark in the middle of the river, and when they conquered Jericho, they also carried the ark as they marched around the city until the walls fell down. But as time passed, the ark was lost. And this is where the greatest mystery in the history of faith began. According to historians, it may have been lost during the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem in 586 before Christ, when they destroyed Solomon's first temple. Some believe that the priests hid it before the temple was destroyed, while others believe it was hidden under Mount Moriah, the same place where it was first placed. There are also theories that say the ark was taken to Ethiopia, and to this day there is a church there that believes they are the guardians of the original ark, but no one has seen it since then. There is no evidence, no pictures, no proof. Only faith and legend remain. That's why it remains one of the greatest mysteries of the Bible. Where could it be now? Was it really hidden, or did God take it back to heaven? Whatever the truth may be, the Ark of the Covenant is more than just a sacred box. It is a reminder of God's presence, that he does not dwell only in walls or altars, but in hearts that are willing to obey his commandments. Ultimately, that's the real lesson of the ark. You don't need to look for God's presence in hidden places, because if your heart is sincere, he is right there, dwelling, listening, and working. So think about it, my friend. If God wants to dwell within you, are you truly ready to prepare for Him? Bring that question into your heart. Thank you very much for watching. May God bless you, and let's see each other again in the next video.